Hola, multidimensional beings. That's what I'm going to use from now on. Um, Hi, everyone. I'm Maria from Branches. Popping on today, tonight, kind of just to share with you my experiences pretty much over the last week or so. Um, Definitely going through a lot of internal shifts that I'm feeling guided to share because I do feel that on some level this is a collective theme for many of us. Um, Depending on where you're at in your awakening process, it could be affecting you differently. But I do feel on some level every single human is feeling the shifts of the collective and the very intense energies that we've sort of been riding, like waves or a roller coaster, whatever metaphor works for you. Um, and yeah, it's been definitely another week of awakenings for me. Um, and I'm always very humbled when I hit another epiphany or awakening because I think a lot of us get caught up in awake and asleep, those labels, right? As many of us are waking up, which is why I don't really even like to consider myself awake. I'm awakening, which I do think I shared in my spiritual awakening video that I made about a month ago, um, which pretty much detailed up to that point where I was in my awakening, how my awakenings began, and here I am about 3.5, almost 4 years later, and I find myself cycling through a lot of the same awakenings again. So, this is why I'm popping on to share because I feel there's a lot of light workers out there feeling the same things, meaning that we kind of keep revisiting the same traumas, shadow, whether it's internally, externally. To me, it's all the same. So, it can feel very frustrating and draining to a lot of us that are consciously like doing the work on ourselves and also consciously still seeking external information about what is going on out there, right? So, this video is kind of just to maybe give some hope to those of you, those of us that are feeling this way, especially this week. Um, Sam and I did our meditation last night, and it was clear to me that there are many of us feeling this way this week, which is why I think I'm being guided to pop on and share my experience as best as I can. So, for me, the best way I can describe just even the last couple days, I have been um, facing a lot of fears again. It's kind of what I do all the time now. But this week it just felt different to me. Like I started to feel almost like confused again, like very similar to how I felt in my very first spiritual awakening. That that thing that a lot of people refer to as like the dark night of the soul. Um, it wasn't as maybe uncomfortable this time because I've been through these ego deaths or whatever you want to call them, these shifts before. But what was weird for me this week, it kind of started at the beginning of the week. I could just feel something inside of me changing. And I didn't really know what it was, but I could just like, I couldn't put my finger on it, couldn't describe it to anybody, didn't really share it with anybody because I didn't really know what I was feeling. But I just felt this like shift inside of me. Like I was once again becoming this new version of me. And that's how I felt when I really first started waking up, when I started to kind of see through the illusions of what I had been taught in life, what we've all been taught, and then see through the illusions of like my limiting beliefs and my thoughts and my emotions and start questioning where did they come from? Why do I think these thoughts? Why do I feel this way? Yada, 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 right? That was kind of how my very first spiritual awakening began. So it felt like the same thing again, but yet this time I couldn't really like put my finger on it. Like Tuesday and Wednesday, I could just feel, and it didn't feel bad or what my ego would label as bad, but I could just feel like something's coming, but not externally. it all had to do with me, like changes, right? And I do have a lot of changes externally coming for me, as we all do. But it was like this internal feeling of like, who am I again? I fell down that rabbit hole again for the millionth time since I first started waking up, which really is, to me, what is supposed to happen as we spiritually awaken. It's calling to question, who are we really, right? And so I've really been observing a lot of what I call, and a lot of people call, like the programs that humans are under. We're all highly, highly, and deeply, deeply programmed. Like, it's insane to me how deep the programs go, which is why I don't say I'm awake. I know that I still have lots of programs inside of my mind that that need to be still revealed. And so for me, when I first sort of started this process of healing, um, there was a lot of, like, it felt like a lot of work, right? In the beginning, it feels like so much work, in the sense that, like, you're starting to become aware of your thoughts, you're starting to become aware of your emotions, and then you're starting to realize how kind of toxic they are, how limiting they are, how disempowering they are. So now you start trying to change them, right? So, many of you have heard, like, oh, replace a negative thought with 3 positive thoughts, right? Which, and I'm not negating that as part of the process. That is sort of part of this process about kind of shifting into new ways of being as humans. But I also recognized in my journey, like, that only goes so far, trying to, like, change your thoughts, because you're trying to change energy, and energy is energy. We can't change it. We can't, like, control it as much as the human part of us wants to. So to me, like, trying to think positive thoughts all the time, yes, it starts to shift your perspective a little bit, but you can't fake energy, right? And, like, you can't tell your body and your mind to think things that it doesn't actually believe. And that's where there's that whole heart math, it's called heart math meditation, heart brain coherence, right? Where the heart is feeling something, or your emotional body is feeling something, and then your brain is thinking thoughts. And most of us are very unaligned. Most of us are thinking thoughts, and then the heart center is not in alignment, and vice versa. So it creates a very dysregulated or chaotic signal that we're putting out to the universe. And this is why oftentimes, like, people get stuck in the whole trying to manifest. Again, another program. Hate to break it to y'all, but trying to manifest things is yet another program we fall into. Because when you really start to understand energy, and that this entire earth plane game is an energy game, no matter whether you're in a 3D mindset, 4D mindset, 5D mindset, and beyond, it doesn't change the fact that everything that's happening down here is energy playing with energy, energy responding to energy. And because I do keep getting deeper and deeper understandings of energy and how it works, it has shifted how I navigate this healing journey, this evolution journey. Because again, in the beginning, it was like, all right, let me try to think positively. Let me try to positive think my way through this, right? But yet the emotions were not in alignment with the thoughts. So it just felt very like I was, like, fighting myself. And I did recognize fairly early into this that this only gets you so far. And then I had to kind of surrender to the fact that these thoughts were coming up for a reason. These emotions were coming up for reasons. And whether or not they originated from me, I own them, because they're now in my body and they're in my mind. So the originating source didn't matter anymore, right? The where did it come from? The why. And that's the other thing I'll kind of touch on is like the why, the why, the questioning, right? Part of this awakening process is all about asking why. Um, why are things happening out there the way that they're happening, right? It's all about starting to question the narratives that are being fed to us. That is all part of this sort of waking up that many of us are going through. We're calling to question the things that we've been taught. So there is a stage of this that you're really in the why, because your brain is trying to make sense of what's going on, because your body can feel that things feel off, but the brain is so conditioned and so programmed and so mind controlled from the time we enter this avatar that the why is absolutely necessary. Like with all of the pandemic um, rules and restrictions, right? Like a lot of people started asking why. Why do they keep changing? What, like, something doesn't make sense, right? Well, things haven't made sense for a long time, but many of us still either can't see that because we're still very, very blinded by our own trauma and our own fears and our own guck, that we legitimately can't see what is going on out there, and that is okay. But there are many people that, especially during 2020, started to ask the whys, and that was really, from a higher perspective, the intention behind this pandemic, right? From a 3D mindset, 3D perspective, it was evil beings that created the virus, right, to cause chaos and fear and inundate us with fear, because fear separates us, it divides us, it puts us all into survival mode. So then we get to play in that game of fear. But from this much higher perspective, it was all part of the earth plane game to wake a lot of us up. I fortunately started waking up a year before, so when it happened, I was very clearly guided by spirit. Like, this is a spiritual awakening for a lot of people. And again, I know I said it in another video, I'm not taking away from the fact that it caused a lot of trauma for people, and a lot of losses, right? I'm not negating that, I'm not downplaying that, but I do understand why that all played out and why it is continuing to play out, and why the powers that be are going to continue to play this game. With this pandemic, they'll create more. They're creating so many distractions for we the people, so we don't focus on ourselves, right? Because when we really take it all in and begin to focus on ourselves and start asking the whys of, why do I think like this? Why do I act like this? Why do I do these behaviors? Why do I care about what people think about me, right? Like all those things. The why is very, very, very important. But I will say personally, and I've recognized it in other people that are at, their stages of their awakening, that they've said the same thing, that like eventually you kind of get to a point where it's like the why doesn't matter anymore. Like I know I have an inner sense of this game that we're playing. So like that analytical why is actually stunting me from just allowing certain energies that are showing up for me to move through me. So when I first started doing my shadow work of both the external and also my internal crap, that why was very, very, very important. I started taking my shamanic apprenticeship, and in that, basically so much of that was shadow work for myself, meaning I was being brought to other past lives, other lives, memories in this life that I had shoved away, or that my ego had conveniently forgot about, to protect me. So I did a lot of shadow work internally in a very short span. It was about 9 months, but it was pretty like aggressive, the whys, right? And so when I would do journeys, that's what it's called in the shamanic world, but a form of meditation, I would ask specific questions in my journey. So I would kind of go digging in my past, right, to see where some of my wounds stemmed from. That was part of it. So that helped me tremendously, right? And like I said, I did that for about 9 months. And then even when I finished the apprenticeship, I continued my practice of it and would sort of go looking for my shadows. And then I started to just use triggers as a guide for me. Instead of setting the intention to be brought to specific traumas in this life or other lives, it was like I was just allowing my everyday experience and the triggers that would happen to show me like where I still had healing to kind of look at, or energies inside of me that were not fully acknowledged or released yet. And so I started using triggers as my teachers because they are. And when I'm referring to triggers, I'm essentially referring to anything or anyone outside of me that causes an emotional reaction inside. Whether or not I actually express that reaction, but inside I can feel a shift, like I'm triggered, right? Like an emotion comes up that's uncomfortable based on what somebody says, how they're acting, how they're behaving. If I'm watching something, I don't watch the news. I haven't watched the news in forever. But if I'm shown something in the news, or if I'm even just watching something on Netflix, whatever it is, anything external to me that creates this sort of like agita inside, right? That's a trigger. It's a trigger. So I started really focusing on my daily triggers. And let me tell you, peeps, triggers happen all the time. And when you're very self-aware and becoming more self-aware, it's like, oh my God, like so much is triggering, right? So those kind of would help me to recognize like, okay, something's coming up for me. Something out there is mirroring an energy that I'm still holding in my body or in my mind. So maybe I don't need to know why, where it stemmed from, the actual original wound, but I still have to look at it. I still have to feel it, and I have to acknowledge it, because the more I try to shove it aside or ignore it or lie to myself and tell myself I'm over it or okay, it's just going to keep rearing its ugly head over and over and over. And I recognize that pretty quick. And that's where, you'll hear a lot of people say, surrender to the process, trust the process. That is surrendering to the process. It's understanding and understanding that we're playing a very, very energetic game here. And thoughts and emotions are just energy. They're energies that we can't see, but they are two energies that are basically dictating how we live our life as humans. And so if they're coming up for you, there is a reason. And as much as we all would love to blame the external for our triggers, that is just part of what our higher self has really kind of signed up for. Because our higher self understands this unity consciousness, understands that we are one, and that anything that we perceive to be external to us, because we live in this illusion of separation in the 3D earth plane. So when something quote unquote external to us is causing an internal rift, it's because energetically we're holding an energy that is being mirrored in the external. So the ego, the human, loves to blame the external. Oh, he triggered me. She triggered me. That show triggered me, right? Like that's just what we do because we're heavily programmed, and we're heavily programmed to be the victim. So, you can play that game with yourself for as long as you want, but it's just another disempowering state to be in when you're blaming the external people and things that trigger you. Because from a higher perspective, from the higher self, it's like, oh yeah, they're just dropping down right now. And whether or not they're consciously or unconsciously doing it, most of the time, I'll be honest, people are unconsciously triggering us based on how they're behaving, what they're saying, their tone, the words, whatever, right? So most of the time, people are not trying to trigger. There are people that also do that 1,000%. But what I've really recognized is like I mostly get triggered by others' unconsciousness, or what I perceive to be others' unconsciousness. It's not necessarily when I feel people are trying to trigger me that I then get triggered. It's like the triggering really happens very unconsciously. And so I digress a little bit and see this is what happens when I'm not really in a thinking mind and I'm just letting stuff flow because I lose my train of thought because there's not really a train of thought. But triggers, yes, we the human want to blame everything and everyone out there for triggering us. Higher self is like, no, they're just dropping into your reality right now as a gift because your higher self is wanting you to see something within you that is ready to be released. So you're having this experience with someone or something in the external that's allowing you to see that if you're very self-aware and willing to look at it and willing to do the why am I feeling this way all of a sudden, like why did that response, that behavior, that whatever it is, why did that just trigger me, right? There's the why that you go through in these stages or that I've gone through. And so the triggers started to really, I no longer had to go like digging in my past, and I stopped. I stopped digging because I realized that, well, I uncovered a lot when I dug, first of all, and it was a lot to process. And I'm probably still processing it now over a year later as I'm talking about this, because there was a lot that came through in those journeys. So I stopped going to look for it and realized, wait a second, like triggers are my teachers and I'm triggered every day. So I might as well just use that as what is still inside of me that is ready to be acknowledged and released. So here I am now, and this is pretty much how I operate every day. Anytime I'm triggered, I kind of just reflectively look at the situation after the trigger happens. I know in a triggered state, there's nothing I can do but allow it to be what it is. Because again, it's energy. So whether it's thoughts that are like perpetuating, or it's an emotion, or it's both, it's like, okay, this is just energy coming up for me. And I don't have to know why. I don't have to know where it came from. I don't have to fix it. This is the biggest thing. This is the biggest thing that I feel like many of us are learning on this path. Because in the very beginning of this, I would have probably said, oh my God, yeah, we have so much about ourselves that we have to fix and change and heal. And then I started to really understand energy. And I was like, oh wait, that's not actually how it works. Like, though my human self feels like it's changing because I'm breaking free from programs and labels and limiting beliefs and programming and mind control. So the human feels like, oh my God, I'm changing. I'm becoming somebody I don't know. And you're just getting closer to who you actually are at your core, your soul, your spirit. So it's very overwhelming. I think that's a good human word to kind of sum up all of this. So as I have evolved and shifted through my evolution process, my perspective of how to go about it has changed. Because I realized through my own suffering how even in this healing process, how I was still sort of creating even more suffering by like fighting everything that was coming up for me, or judging it, or being like, I have to change this right now. Like this has to be gone right now, right? That's still all an egoic pattern. The ego is what wants to control, change, fix everything. It's the ego. The higher self is like, you're beautiful and perfect the way you are. That is how the higher self sees each and every one of us, that we are this whole beautiful being that is experiencing a human journey. So there is no aspect of our higher self that thinks or believes that we need to change anything. The higher self just wants us to remember the higher self. That's all. Higher self's like, just remember me. And so as I am remembering my higher self more and more every day, my human self is having a hard time again. And that's what I've kind of been feeling this last week, because I have really been heavily observing these programs we're all under. And even in my spiritual communities, I picked this up pretty quickly, like 2 years ago. I was on a lot of different Facebook groups and meeting people in all different places, right, that were part of what we would label as a spiritual community. And that is yet another program. And I was starting to realize, like, my God, like these people that are part of this spiritual community are very like hypocritical. Like they're saying one thing, but they're literally doing the other thing. Like they're saying they're here to break free from the 3D matrix, but they don't even see that they're still perpetuating and playing in the 3D matrix. So that was a pretty early observation I made in my awakenings, which I was grateful for, because I could have easily slipped into judging them, but I didn't. I observed and really studied like human behavior. And it was very like, I was like in awe, to be honest, like how intricate and confusing we are as a species. But we're confusing because we're confused, and we're confused because we've been mind controlled. So again, compassion and empathy for all, no matter where you're all at in whatever you perceive this to be. But in that, it really helped me to start to accept and see that even though we are all these badass spiritual beings, we're all in a human avatar skin suit. So we're all navigating and dealing with the same human issues and the same human emotions and the same human thoughts. Our experiences are not all cookie cutter and the same, no, but there is a commonality in the human experience. And when I really started to observe like how programmed even a lot of quote unquote spiritual teachers are, right? It helped me to humble myself, first of all, because I'm also somebody that used to put a lot of people on pedestals, because I believed myself inferior and them superior, which all that did was disempower me and all the people I put on pedestals. Because again, while we're here, we're humans. We are that. I'm not saying that is all of who we are by any means, but while we're in this game, we are in a human body. So we are humans. And as humans, we have human ways of being. And when I started to really see how deep the programs were, it caused me to have even more compassion for people, because it's like everybody that I used to, watch and listen to from that perspective. I'm not talking about the people that I really like resonate with. I'm just talking about the people I would observe. It was like, wow, they actually can't see that they're still playing in the game. Like they're literally saying one thing, but yet their energy and their behaviors are a completely different vibration. So I used that also for myself to kind of recognize when I do that. Again, mirrors, teachers, triggers, they're all part of my tools to teach myself where am I at in my evolution, in my healing. And it's not to compare, because that is yet another program that disempowers all of us. It's not for me to compare where they're at or stage them or level them. Oh, they're here and I'm here. Like, no, that's still playing in the 3D game. But it's using it as a tool to be like, oh, wow, like they are very unaware of that energy that they're carrying or they're projecting. And it's like, if I'm not triggered by it, then I'm just like kind of studying it. If I'm triggered by it, then I know that I'm also that human, somehow unaware that I am projecting or holding on to something that I'm not aware of. And so, you hear Sam and I talk about the duality here on the earth plane, and love, fear are really the two, what I'd say, main energies that we play with down here. And we're very confused about what is what, because fear is masked as love and love is masked as fear. It's crazy. Um, I'm still remembering what true love actually is. True energy of love, not being in love with somebody, not, oh, I love this car. I'm talking about the energy of love, which is what we all came from. And so as I break each program every day, it's like I have another understanding of what love is and what fear is. So we've got love and fear, right? And with fear, there are all these little, I don't know, you want to call them like little subsets of fear. Or ah, brilliant. I just hear fear wears many faces. It's brilliant. Fear wears many faces, and it does. So fear can show up as sadness. It can show up as anger. It can show up as worry. It can show up as insecurity, unworthiness, lack of confidence. It can show up as guilt, shame, all of those energies, right, that I refer to as like lower vibration. And if you were to look at an actual chart of frequencies and vibrations, those are all the ones that are low, on the lower scale. Apathy, guilt, shame. And they really all kind of stem from fear, but then they manifest in our body and in our emotions as these other things. But at the end of the day, they came from fear, and fear basically comes from not feeling safe in this earth game. Anytime we don't feel safe, right? And I'm not even just talking about physical safety. I'm talking about safety to be who we are, to speak our truth, to stand up for ourselves, to show emotion, to express ourselves authentically, right? There are so many of us in fear of doing that, because I see this in every single person I work with, right? And we're all like, oh, I don't have any fears. I'm not afraid to die. Okay, it's not really all about that. What I've really recognized is we don't like to feel uncomfortable here. We don't like anything that isn't comfortable, because our ego has literally protected us from feeling uncomfortable, right? So when you think about those words I use, the shame, the guilt, the anger, the sadness, the depression, the anxiety, the insecurity, all of those things feel uncomfortable in the body and in the mind. And so we as humans work overtime to try to numb that shit out, or bypass it, or lie to ourselves and tell ourselves we don't have those things wrong with us, right? We don't have insecurities. We don't have these problems. It's everybody else that has them. But if you're walking in a human avatar, we all have them. Because if you understand collective energy too, we all have them. So again, we can lie to ourselves all we want, but we're just stunting our own growth. And so the ego is the aspect of us that doesn't want to feel uncomfortable. It wants to stay safe, but yet what it actually does is it just keeps us in these same cycled patterns over and over and over, living in survival mode. That's the ego's game, because it literally thinks it's protecting us from bad things happening again, right? It remembers, that's why it remembers every bad experience that the body or the mind took on as bad, as negative, meaning we didn't allow ourselves to fully feel the trauma of it. We didn't allow ourselves to fully feel into the experience of it. So the ego's like, I'm coming in as your protector, and we're just going to shove this memory way, way back. So you don't have to think about it. Don't worry about it. You'll never have to acknowledge that, right? Because we're going to shove it all the way back there, so it's not actually in your conscious mind. And so that's what our ego does our whole life until we start to become aware that we even have an ego and that this is how it operates. And then we start this beautiful journey of self-awareness. And that is the journey I've now been on, again, for about 3.5 years. And it is empowering and exhausting at the same time. Because like I said in the beginning, it feels like so much work, like you're trying to change all these things about yourself. But again, we all hit a certain point and realize, like, oh my God, it's not about changing anything about me. It's about stripping away these things that were never me to begin with, but I have now attached myself to them. I have now identified with them. So they've become this false version of me. And so the last couple days, what I've been feeling is like I'm shedding another version of me again. And it's like, this feels really uncomfortable. Like, how much more do I have to change? Like, oh my God, right? Like, ego, that's just my ego. I'm just being real with the things that have been happening and going through my head. Because it's scary to feel like you're changing. It's scary because we're afraid if we change, people in our life won't understand us anymore. They won't love us anymore. All of these narratives that come up, and that's fear. So many of us are afraid to change because we have become so attached to these false versions. There's a mosquito in here. That's why I keep doing this. We've become attached to these false labels and versions of who we think we are. And so I started realizing that again, like I've realized that multiple times throughout this process, but it was deeper this time. It just felt different. Like it felt like, oh my God, like everything's a program. Everything I've ever identified with is a program. All these labels, even like, I don't even like to refer to myself as a psychic medium or a shamanic practitioner, because again, I feel like they're just labels and it's not who I am. It's an aspect of what I'm choosing to experience because I'm aware of my gifts, but we're all psychics. We're all born with these same innate clairvoyant, clairsentient, claircognizant, clair, because we're all energy. So we're all born with these exact same gifts. It's a matter of which ones of us are choosing to tap into it and to trust it and to believe it and to follow it, to be guided by it, right? So again, it's like I'm even now having a hard time referring to myself as like anything because I'm like, oh my God, it's like another label and it's another program. Because I find with every label, there's programs within programs. So example, being a nurse, right? A nurse is a label. It's a profession, but it's a label. And in that profession come all of these programs. So there's the nurse program that I'm still breaking because it's heavy, it's deep, it's very deep. And Sam and I just made a video the other day about compassion, which goes into like my perspective of the programming of healthcare providers and as nurses, and like that we're like these like robots and taught things. We're taught compassion, we're taught these things in school, but yet like very few of us actually emanate that within the work field. So it's like, oh my God, we're very hypocritical. We all are. But that's not me judging us. It's just me recognizing that we're all very confused. And why wouldn't we be? We've been literally spoon-fed so many lies from the time we exited the womb that it's like, of course we're confused, right? So I'm feeling a lot of that confusion this week. And I do feel that some of it is from the collective, but I also know it's my own stuff again. Like why am I starting to have like new thoughts about things? So this kind of goes back to like trying to change your thoughts and stuff, right? So like I haven't been trying to change my thoughts for a long time because I recognize that's not how this actually works. Again, I do believe in the beginning there's an aspect of that that is beneficial and sort of needs to be done, but it's only going to get you so far because you're fighting against energy that's just energy that we can't literally change or control. The way we allow energy to change naturally is to allow it to be what it is, acknowledge it for what it is, and then it naturally has its own way of changing, alchemizing. But like there's this focus in the spiritual community. You have to change it, you have to fix it, right? And I feel like that's where a lot of light workers are a little bit stuck right now, because everybody's exhausted and they don't know how to change it anymore. Friends, let me tell you, you can't. You cannot change it. Just like you can't really change anything that's going on out there as much as many of us would like to. We can't. But we do have to see all of it. Whether I'm talking about the external matrix or the internal matrix, again, to me, it's literally all the same thing. So I have a hard time even separating it because I understand that that is a 3D mindset, separating the two. To me, it is all the same. And that's how spirit has me experience things when I'm shown the horrific, traumatic stuff that's happening out there. When I'm shown those things or brought to those things, it's also like, yeah, but you're also those things. It's also, this is why it's triggering to you. Here's your mirror. So it's like the illusion of separation is just that. It's an illusion. So I have a hard time kind of going internal, external, because to me it literally is all the same. It's all the same. But with that said, we can't change energy. The human part of us cannot change energy. It's just energy that needs to flow and move, because that's what energy does. But as the human, the ego part of us actually attaches to it, grabs onto it, and then holds it in. And then guess what? Eventually, we, the human, become those energies, or those energies become a disease in us because now we've actually grabbed it. So it's almost, I mean, it's almost comical to me, and I don't mean this to be insensitive, but it's almost comical how the process works, because it's like, here's the ego that is trying to protect us, to keep us safe. It's actually doing the complete opposite. It's making all of those energies that made us feel unsafe stay inside of us, and we're unconscious to it. So they're still dictating how we show up in the world. They're still controlling how we behave, how we perceive things, how we react, how we respond, how we speak. It's controlling us. And so it's funny because it's like, dude, the ego is trying to do the opposite of what it's actually doing to us. And I had this quote dropped in yesterday. I haven't posted it yet, but I'll share it because it's very, it's like everything I'm talking about. And so this came through yesterday when I was in a conversation with my husband, and it just like again, there was no thought. It just flew out, and we were both like, whoa, that was deep, but it's true. So all the ego wants is to remain comfortable, when in the irony, it's the one that's creating all the suffering, because it is. And we talked about suffering a little bit in our meditation meeting last night, and like, what is suffering, right? I have a very different perspective of suffering now. So before I started waking up, I would say I was a human that was suffering every day of my life. But I was doing it unconsciously because I was really good at lying to myself, as we all are, that I was okay. Even though like my entire body had been broken for 5 or 6 years already, right? And like I knew my thoughts were pretty toxic, but I didn't know how toxic they were till I started to become really aware of them. So in those years before I started waking up, I would consider myself a very suffering human, unconsciously suffering, which in turn made my energy pretty toxic. Because when we are unconsciously suffering, again, we are being controlled by the ego. So we are putting out these energies in a way that we are affecting everybody around us. And we're also playing in these codependent games with other people's egos. That's what happens. Like when you're in that unconscious state, you tend to have a lot of people in your life, in your environment, in your tribe, if you want to call it, like in your realm, that are also unconsciously in their ego. Because again, it's just how energy works. Like those are the people we gravitate to and that gravitate to us, which is yet again why I was afraid to change, because I was afraid it would change my circle of people. But then I realized I didn't want to play in an unconscious ego game anymore, because once you're conscious of it, you don't want to be around the unconscious of it. It's like almost like nauseating. And a lot of my clients that I coach right now kind of like feeling and going through this as well. Like they're starting to become self-aware, and then when they're around family members or friends that have like no self-awareness, we'll say, or very little, it's like they don't want to be around that, because before they were unconsciously playing in that toxicity, playing in those conversations, playing in the gossip, playing in the bullshit, right? And then you start to realize, like, I don't actually want to play in that anymore. So now who do I play with? So there's definitely a period of this that we all go into, like, I feel wicked lonely, I feel like the black sheep, all these things. That's part of it. It's part of pushing us into our power even more, though. Those feelings of loneliness, those feelings of being misunderstood. That's part of stepping further into our truth and further into our empowerment. We have to feel those things to realize, like, we're not alone. We're never alone. But much of this journey feels very lonely. Even when you have people that are good support systems, even when you have people that can, on some level, understand, at the end of the day, nobody fully understands or understands you in your journey, in your experiences. So no matter how many ways you try to explain it, you still feel alone. And for me, I've recognized that has helped me become more empowered, because I'm also somebody that had huge abandonment issues. Huge. Well, we all do, but I've always been aware of my abandonment issues. And I believe that all stemmed from being adopted. And yes, there was a big part of that, but being put up for adoption. But there's so many layers of the abandonment that live within me and all of us. And we all just express it differently. But with my abandonment issues, it's like I always, on some level, needed somebody in either physically near me or emotionally. I had to know that I could always reach out to somebody, right? Like I was attached. So these feelings of loneliness, I've learned to use them as like a superpower now, to realize, like, I am going to be okay no matter who or what is in my life, because all of this is temporary anyways, and none of these things or people are mine to own, nor can I control any of it or them. So I better get really comfortable with being alone, feeling alone, right? Because I am my only everything. And I'm saying this because I know there's a lot of you out there that are feeling this way, especially within family units, because within families globally, there are those of us, and it's our contract, our soul's contract, right? That we chose to be some of the first people to wake up. So as those way showers, as that first wave of people, you feel very isolated and very alienated from your family, even if they're not actually alienating you, right? Even if they're not actually shunning you, there's an aspect of you that feels that way, or that you don't even want to be around them because you can't talk to them about anything and you don't want to hear about anything they're talking about. Like, we all go through that. So hence why we all feel very lonely at different times in this. And I still feel those feelings too. And that's knowing I have a huge tribe of people that I know I could reach out to. But I also know that nobody's ever gonna fully understand my experience of my experience because it's my experience. So while I'm more than grateful that I have people that will hold space for me when I go through these things, I also recognize there's an aspect of me that has to go through this alone a lot. And I've done that a lot these last 2 years, especially since I've moved out here to Arizona. It's been actually 2 years tomorrow that we moved out here. And I've done a lot of this work by myself because that was helping me to trust me more, to build this level of confidence, to realize that I'm my own protector. I am my own safety zone. I'm my own coach. I'm my own all of it. And that doesn't mean that now, like, the people in my life that are willing to be there for me, that I just say, I don't need you anymore, right? Like, that's not me. I am appreciative and grateful. And I recognize that there are times I do still have to lean on them 1,000%. And that is okay because that is part of being human. So I'm not going from one extreme to another where I was very needy before. Now I'm this ultra independent. No, because I also recognize that's another trauma response, right? They're both trauma responses on opposite ends of the spectrum, but they all still come down to like a fear of losing people, a fear of people getting too close to us, a fear of abandonment. It's wild how these energies are in all of us, but how we all express them differently and how we project them differently. But it's all stemming from the same energy. So with my abandonment, it's like I've had to learn how to navigate a lot of this by myself per my choice. Again, Sam has always been like, call me for anything, like, you know, and I appreciate that. But it's like, I also know there's been many times I have to go through this by myself to prove to myself that I am not only capable of it, but I'm pretty fucking good at it. Like, to be able to sit with the shit that I've allowed myself to sit with for 2 years, and this is not at all coming from ego because I don't really have, well, my ego would not speak confidently. Like my whole thing around confidence is like I downplay everything. Like I'm not good at this, right? Like, so for me to be able to say I'm good at this and not cringe by saying that, I'm kind of cringing, but I'm recognizing how challenging this is to allow ourselves to surrender and feel all of these things and see them all and not get sucked into it, but just allow it to be and allow the energy to move through me. I understand why this journey is courageous and I'm pretty fucking good at it because I haven't shied away from the shadow. I haven't shied away from the shadow from the beginning I started waking up as much as I wanted to. I didn't really feel like I had a choice because I had woken up to the point that I was so suffering. Like, my body was breaking. Mentally, I was not in a good place. Emotionally, I was not in a good place. So what I was doing was not working. So I knew I needed to start to do things differently for myself. And so when I started to face these shadows out there and do my internal shadow work, it started to prove to me like that my sensitivities that I always perceived or was told by other people were weaknesses, right? Like a lot of our beliefs, it's not all in our head, right? Some of it comes from just experience, and then how we experience it, we create a story. But a lot of what we believe at some point was said to us by someone else. So it's like you're not making these things up. And that's where the whys come in, right? Back to when I used to ask why, where'd this come from? I started to see where a lot of my insecurities came from. And it's not to blame or shame people, right? Because again, we're all unconsciously playing the game. But it's to help yourself see where that insecurity came from. And so it allows you to have compassion for yourself, just like you would for somebody else. If somebody else came and told you this story, right? And you'd meet them with all sorts of compassion and like, oh my God, it's not your fault, and da 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 da. But when it happens to you, we all of a sudden become very judgy and like we're very hard on ourselves. And that's because people have been hard on us. So society is hard on us. So then we're hard on ourselves. And like all that does is create more unconscious suffering for ourselves. And then we just keep spewing that out to everybody else. And we're all perpetuating the same cycle, this same loop, right? So a lot of what you believe about yourself, it did come from other people. And so when you can see that, you can start to like have more compassion for yourself and be like, oh my goodness, no wonder why you think that. No wonder why you feel that way, right? But again, it's not to now get all pissed off at those people. It's recognizing that they were unconscious. And then you feel for them because then you're like, oh my God, this is what they mean when they say hurt people hurt people. Because it's true. When we're hurting, especially when we're unconsciously hurting, we project and spew that out to everybody else. And then we all do the same thing until we start to realize that's what we're doing. And then we're like, I don't want to do this anymore because this feels shitty. So for me, like this last week has really been about, again, it's shedding these programs and becoming more aware of how programmed everything is. And like, now I'm starting to question, like, what is love again, right? What is fear? What is compassion? Hence, we made the video on compassion the other day. Why do I feel like I have to behave in certain ways or do certain things because of a role I play in somebody's life? That's what's been happening for me lately. It's like these thoughts are coming up that I'm not trying to go digging for. I'm not asking them consciously. It's coming up because, again, this is how the energy rolls. It's coming up because I have shed a lot of layers. So now, because I've shed a lot of layers, more layers are coming up. So it's like, yeah, great, you've shed so much, but guess what? There's still a lot in there that needs to be shed. And it may still be circulating the same paradigm, the same narrative, the same insecurity, the same fear, right? And that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. I really want people to understand there is nothing wrong with you if you've been doing this work for a while and you still feel like you're revisiting the same fears. There is nothing wrong with you. There is energy within you that your ego has become very crafty about masking. Same thing for me. So stop judging where you're at in your healing process. Stop judging where other people are at in their ascension process and start allowing yourself to just surrender to whatever's coming up, because it's coming up for a reason, and it's coming up because it's ready for you to face. And this game is all about facing fears. You can either unconsciously play in them and not look at them, but become the fear because you're not acknowledging any of it, or you can start to step out of that and face your fears. And like I said, fear wears many faces. Think to yourself about any emotion that is in your body, when it comes up, it feels uncomfortable. It feels nauseating. That is your body telling you that it is holding on. Your nervous system is holding on to something that is still circulating in your aura that you're not aware of. And thank you for the external trigger for bringing that to light for me. Because if that didn't trigger me, I may still be unconsciously walking around with this, right? And again, it's not to say that when you hit a certain insecurity, then it just goes away. Oh no, my friends. No, no, no. No, that's not how this works. That is not how energy works. And if we're still living and breathing every single day of our life, we're still taking on more trauma. So we can work through traumas from the past, but it doesn't mean we're unscathed from now. No trauma is going to touch us for the rest of our human experience. Yeah, no. That's part of the human experience. That is the part of the human experience that sets it apart from every other experience in all of the other realms. That is the part of the human journey that allows us to evolve so potently. It's those traumas that we are so afraid to re-feel, to re-acknowledge, to remember, because that would be uncomfortable to the ego. But yet the soul is like, yeah, set me free, sister, set me free. Each time you shed another layer of who you aren't, a little bit more of the soul is embodied in your body. That's literally how I see it. It's like another layer comes off, so I got a little bit more light in there. And with that little bit more light in there, now I see another layer that needs to come off. And it's like boom, 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 and it just keeps happening, keeps happening. And then it gets faster. The process of it gets faster, especially the more you just allow the process to be. So yesterday, for example, I woke up not good. And Sam had the previous day a very similar experience. So when I woke up, I'm like, oh, fuck, I'm going through what she went through yesterday. Thank God she made a video on her green infinity thing. If you haven't watched it, watch it. Because I used it yesterday. So like she was in her shit the day before, feeling collective, feeling her own stuff, going through triggers, yada, yada, yada. Same thing she and I do. It's like a little dance we do every day. I'm up, she's down, she's up, I'm down. Yin yang. It's cool. But yesterday I woke up nauseous again. I'm like, fucking A, my solar plexus. Like immediately I'm like, oh, solar plexus, anxiety, yada. But like the nausea was not going away. And then it was just progressively getting worse. And then I was feeling emotions and I was like, what is going on with me? Like there was nothing that triggered it. And this is my point. This is a point that I want to make. There was nothing that triggered me to feel that way yesterday. There was nothing said by somebody. There was no, like I literally woke up in that energy. And as my morning progressed, that energy was building. And then there were some things that happened that we'll say ignited that energy a little bit more. But that energy was already brewing. And I was trying to just allow myself to be in it. I was not trying to analyze it because I feel like I'm out of that stage of this. I have recognized that the analyzing of the experience is making the experience longer and more just dragged out, and like it's creating more of like just like a whirlwind in the experience instead of just surrendering to the fucking experience of what it is, right? So it's like when I'm analyzing it, I'm like slowing down the process of it. I'm like slowing down the energy in my body. I'm trapping it again because I'm trying to make sense of it from my human mind, and it's like, yo, energy doesn't make sense to the human mind. Hate to break it to you all, but energy is nonsensical from a linear, analytical, human brain perspective. It doesn't make sense. So that's why the more I work with energy, I have a hard time sometimes explaining it. Or at least I perceive I do, but I'm told by other people I do a good job. So there's, again, my own limiting belief. But maybe it's with some people, I have a hard time explaining something when people want to make sense of it, and it's like I don't know how else to say it because I this is how I'm experiencing it. This is how I see it now. This is again an example of my shifting inside. Like I can't stop the change from happening now. Like it's like I can't stop myself from changing. And I think that's what I was feeling this week is that these things that are coming up for me, it's like these new thoughts or these new realizations of like how I've been in the world and how other people have been. It's like, oh, that wasn't love. So then it's causing me to be like, oh God, what is love again? Like what's fear? Who am I? Uh, what is going on again? Why do I feel like I'm going through another spiritual awakening again? And yesterday I said that at one point to I'm like, why do I feel like I'm going through this same fucking awakening that I went through 3.5 years ago? My higher self goes, because you are, but you're hitting another layer of it. You are going through the same questioning, right? The who am I? What is my purpose? Why am I here? Why am I going through this? Why did I sign up for this? Why do I want to feel these things? Why? Why am I thinking these thoughts? Why am I feeling these new ways about things and situations and people that like, I don't want to feel this way. Does this make me a bad person? Oh my God. And it's like, I felt crazy yesterday again. I felt like I was unraveling and I was losing my mind again. And it lasted for a good chunk of yesterday. And there are parts that have dribbled into today, 1,000%. Even though by the end of yesterday, I was in a much better state. When I say better, I mean I was not unraveling anymore. I was more grounded and able to do meditation last night and have like an amazing conversation with people and recognizing where many of us are feeling the same things. So that's why I'm really feeling called to share this with people because you're not alone. Even though you may feel super alone and super misunderstood, you are not alone. None of us are. We all have armies of guides that are literally with us every step of this journey. It's a matter of us allowing ourselves to receive their guidance and to believe and to trust. 3 really hard things for we as the human to do. We have a hard time receiving because we're all walking around with unworthiness and guilt and shame. We have a hard time trusting because we've all been fucked over many times and we've fucked people over, so we don't really trust. And believing, we believe in what we've been told to believe. So then when we start questioning our beliefs and formulating new beliefs, we have a hard time believing in good, to be honest, because we've been pumped with such limiting, negative, disempowering beliefs that then when there's like a belief that feels good, oh, it can't be real. Oh, we're living in the clouds. Oh, we're whatever, right? So those 3 things stunt we the humans from receiving guidance from our guides, from our higher self, because we don't trust, we don't believe in higher ways of being, in empowering beliefs, and we don't receive well because we don't feel worthy of these gifts that we were all born with. We were all born psychic. Do you hear me? We were all born psychic. Every single one of us is psychic. But our minds have been conditioned the complete opposite. So we don't believe that we are worthy of these gifts and that only some of us are gifted. No, we're all just as gifted, and we're all just as wounded as well. So none of us are any better or any less than anybody else. And if you have people in your life telling you that they are or you are or whatever, just take a step back and allow yourself to observe that, and where is that coming from? Because we are all equal. We're all source energy. And what we chose before we jumped down here, we all had different things we wanted to come down and experience before we even signed up for the game. And then in the game, we have free will, and we have our own choices that can also change those contracts, right? It's not like higher self is like, oh, this is, it's like we kind of create like a maybe like a syllabus, or I feel like a syllabus is a good way of like saying it, but like a syllabus, kind of like a guide. A guide. We create a little guide from our higher self of the things we want to like knock out in this incarnation. And these are some of the people we're gonna knock it out with, yada, yada, yada. But we also say, but I also know as the human I have free will. So I can change any of these things while I'm down there, right? And higher self's not judging that. Higher self's like, that is part of the earth game. You guess what? Hey, free will. Only planet that you get to play around in that. So enjoy it, right? So we all had different things that we wanted to come down and experience, and then we as the human can change that as much as we want while we're here, right? So none of us is on the same journey. Now, we intermingle and share experiences to share in each other's journeys, but none of us is on the same, that would be boring AF if we were all just doing the same thing, because that's really what the powers that be want us to do, to all just do the same thing and obey and agree and da 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 da, right? Be the robots. Like, we're already AI. Like, they talk about AI taking over. I'm sorry, but the human avatar is already AI. It really is. And yet again, this is what I mean about these programs. They're so deep and thick in everything that we do. And for me, that's what again, this last, I'd say, what's today? Thursday? Okay, mine started about 2 weeks ago, from being honest. 2 weeks ago, my next awakening started to happen again. And what I can tell you with that is that, guess what? It was still the same things I had to sit with very uncomfortably. It was still the same attachments that I had to release again and again and again. And instead of questioning why, I just allowed myself to do it, because I was like, this is energy. I don't have to know why it's coming up again. It's coming up because I still energetically am holding on to it. Even though I've done a really good job at releasing a lot of it, it's still coming up because it still has to come up. So I allowed myself to be in it, in the thick of all the uncomfortableness. And I was laying in my bed, like literally writhing in pain one night. Crying, bawling, screaming, thankfully home alone. And all of a sudden the guides, they started ripping away from me everything that still I identify with as like part of who I am. So my roles, my everything. It's like, first I saw the house get ripped away. I see family being ripped away. All my family. So now I'm not a daughter anymore. Now I'm not a wife anymore. Now I'm not a sister anymore. Now I'm not an aunt anymore. I'm not a nurse. I'm not a shamanic practitioner. I'm not an energy healer. I don't have a house anymore. Like, and it's literally, I was laying there and it's like they were pulling it. So like everything that I identify as my reality, and in turn, which makes me me, was gone. And I sat there and I grieved like a motherfucker. I grieved until I literally couldn't grieve anymore. I'm telling you, this took several hours. It actually took 2 days for me. Until I had nothing left in me to grieve. And then I felt so much better at the end of it, because I realized all of these things and people and material things are temporary in my life. So what did I learn? How to release attachment for the gajillionth time. How to be grateful for the presence of them in my life now. Because these aspects are in my life right now. And knowing that in this right now, it's all part of my experience, then I became more grateful for it. So what did I learn? Another layer of gratitude. What did I learn? Another layer of badassery of myself, because I just sat there and grieved every loving person in my life like they were dead. Can't tell you how many times I've gotten to do that one. That's a fun game to play with yourself. Sit at funerals that have not happened yet. Picture people that you love gone. Yeah. But guess what? I didn't actually ask to go do that. It's what my higher self brought into my reality to say, here's what needs to be looked at right now. Here's what needs to be felt right now. And hey, you can go numb out. You want to go smoke a joint? Go ahead. You want to throw on the TV to not think about it, to not feel it? Go right ahead. You have that free will to do that. But it's still going to be here after you're done numbing out, after you're done distracting yourself. So I did not allow myself to watch TV. I didn't go on my Facebook to look at videos to make me feel better. I sat in my shit. And I've done this so many fucking times in the last 2 years, I can't even count how many times I have sat in my shit. And much of it by myself. And it's the only thing that has helped me to be where I am now. That is why I am where I am in my evolution process. Because I have finally surrendered to sitting in my shit when it comes up. And I'm not gonna lie and say that it's easy, because it's not. And there's an aspect of me that still feels guilty when I go through my shit, 1,000%. Because, dear God, now I'm affecting the energy of everybody around me, right? Now I am that toxic energy is what my ego's saying. But I'm not. It's different. I was that toxic energy when I was unaware and pretending I was all happy, right? That's when I was really toxic, because energetically that's not what I was giving out to my environment. That's when I was freaking toxic. I'm not toxic when I'm going through my shit. My ego can try to convince me that I am. I'm not. I'm just an energetic being who's courageous enough to sit with it and not deny it or not acknowledge it or blame it on somebody else. I recognize now, it's not me being toxic, it's me being real and getting in touch with this human aspect of us that we've all numbed out for eons. It's not just this life that we've numbed out, many. All my other lives that I've gotten to remember in meditation, I lived in survival mode. It's how I lived, survival mode. I am not wanting to live like that this time. So I'm continuing to, it's not to say that, friends, I am not even close to being healed. I am not even close to being out of survival mode, because that would mean I've broken free of all my fears. No. And I honestly don't believe that in my entire linear life in this vessel, I will break free from all of my fears. Because fear is a very potent teacher in this earth plane game. So if I was completely just out of it, what the fuck am I learning then, right? Why am I still here then? I could be floating around in the higher dimensions, in the higher realms, not playing in fear. So I personally don't think that I am here to completely just oh my God, all my fears are going to be gone by the time I die. No, I am going to become conscious enough that those fears don't unconsciously control me. Do you understand? So it doesn't mean I'm not going to feel fear. It doesn't mean I'm not going to be affected by people that are in fear or feel fear. Um, I'm not here to be superhuman. I'm here to be a spiritual being in a human body. And while I'm in the human body, I am very aware that fear is an energy we have chosen to create down here. And if I can embrace it with love, then the human part of me feels free, right? That's to me being free. That human aspect that was being so controlled unconsciously by my fear starts to feel free. So now I can actually live my life in enjoyment, not looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next shoe to drop, right? Because that's how many of us live, like, especially when we're in states of joy. Sam and I talk about this a lot. But then when we allow ourselves to feel joy, it's almost like we don't fully even embrace the joy because, like, we know something's coming down the pike that joy is not going to last. So why even experience it for this now moment if it's just going to be gone, right? It's so fucked up, the shit that that we've convinced ourselves of. We're not safe to feel joy. We're not safe to be happy. Because if we're happy, then, oh God, how could we be happy in such a dark world? We must be completely ignorant to everything that's out there if we're happy. No, not the case. But again, these are all the stories that, like, we create, that other people have created. So then again, look how fear can creep into just a moment of joy. Like, to fully embrace the joy of something, whether it's at a celebration or like you're just jamming out to your favorite music, right? There's that little voice, that little ego voice that's like basically preparing you for being a victim again, or something's wrong with you that you're feeling happy right now because you shouldn't be feeling happy in such chaos, right? All of these crazy things. So this is why I say fear creeps into everything. And even when we're awake, we still don't see how fear is literally trickles into everything. And it's crafty because it appears as love, or how we've been taught what love is, and compassion and empathy. And when I tell you, you start to tap into these actual energies and not the label of what we've been told what it is, it feels very different. And that's where I think I'm learning to, like, the labels of even just emotions are so skewed. It's not like how it's described in the human way is not the energy of it. It's not. Even gratitude. Like, my whole life, there's been things I've been grateful for, 1,000% appreciative of, right? But the energy of gratitude, if we were all anchored in the energy of gratitude, there would be no suffering anymore. And so, we talk to people and it's like, oh, I'm grateful. I'm great. Everybody thinks they're grateful. And I'm not saying that people aren't grateful. What I'm saying is the energy of gratitude itself, it's like another level. It's like love. It's an energy that feels very different than just being grateful for things or people in your life. It's a whole different frequency. And so I think that for me, that's what I've been navigating this last week, and it's been uncomfortable for me because I'm stripping away more labels and programs that I thought I understood, and it's like, fuck, I didn't understand it at all. I didn't. And so then there's that part of me that comes in and wants to, like, judge, and then also then I don't want to change again. There's that whole fear of changing. And I realized, like, I can't stop this process. I'm going to keep changing. And that's what is supposed to happen. And I've become comfortable. I've recognized I've become comfortable with this new version of me, that as more new thoughts start coming into my mind or new feelings about things are coming in, it's uncomfortable because it's like, shit, I thought I already changed. Well, yeah, I have changed a lot. But guess what? Evolution is evolution. Change is change. It means it keeps happening. So it doesn't mean like, oh, now I've plateaued. This is the new me, right? Like, this is the new me today. I wake up every day feeling different. And that's what I started to feel the last 3 days is like, I literally felt almost like somebody else dropped into my body. And I was like, great, here I go again. I've already caused friction in my perspective of change when I first started changing. And so here comes that fear again of, oh, fuck me, I'm changing again and I'm not even trying to. Like, I'm actually not trying to change. This is what I'm trying to say to you people. In the beginning of my process, I was trying to change things, hence why everything felt exhausting. Now it is literally just a process that's naturally happening. And it's almost even more uncomfortable because I can tell I have no control over it. And yes, I can still control what I say, what I do, but I can't change the shift that's happening inside of me that is telling me to do things differently. And that's the part that has been hard for me to accept the last 2 days, is that I know I'm going to keep changing. And as I change, my interests change, everything changes. As you shift inside, everything changes. How you view things change. What you say changes. How you say. What you're interested in. What you want. All of it changes. And it's like, oh, fuck. I was finally in a place where I was content again. I was comfortable, says my ego. Because it's all about the ego being comfortable. And I'm like, I don't want to change anymore. I don't want to. I don't want it. I remember yesterday I had feelings of like I want to flee. I don't know where I wanted to flee to because I can't flee from myself. But it was like I never felt so that I wanted to be in isolation as I did yesterday. And again, I'm not somebody that likes to self-isolate. My attachment issues, I like to be around people. And so here's another change happening for me that is like, wait, now I want to go be by myself? Why? 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 Like, I don't understand why. Is it because I feel like I'm affecting other people or other people are affecting me? Oh my God. And like all the fucking thoughts coming in that like were driving me insane. But energetically, I just was like, I just want to flee. I just want to flee. And I don't even know where I want to go. But I don't want to do this anymore. Like, and I heard myself, I'm afraid to change. I'm afraid to keep changing because I feel like even though I say I'm here to evolve and shift and when it actually starts to happen, it is scary as fuck. There's no other way for me to say it to you is that it feels so scary because again, I can feel it inside of me and like there's this part of me that's trying to not allow it to happen. And I've already been told so many freaking times over the last 2 years of the things that I do that I am doing that is stunting my own spiritual growth. And again, it always comes back to fear of acceptance from other people. And so yesterday I actually pulled cards for myself because when I get into these states, although I'm very connected with spirit, I can't discern what voice is what energy is what, because I'm the human in the thick of it. So I can't. And so I was like, all right, I'm just going to pull cards because cards will give me a visual. It'll give me like a word or something. Because I use oracle cards. I don't do tarot. And ever since I used oracle cards when I very, very first started taking psychic development classes, I was taught not to look in the book. And I don't think she literally meant forever. I think it was just when we were first starting to use the cards as a tool and not to rely on the book, but I take everything literally sometimes. And so I took that and ran with it, and I have 4 Oracle card decks that I still haven't really looked at the book for hardly any of them. But yesterday, Higher Self was like, look at the book, because I pulled 4 cards, and right before I pulled them, this is how I do it. I just ask for, I said, I call in, my higher self, my compassionate guides, the same thing I do when I do a healing. And I said, I just need healing, wisdom, and guidance for my highest and best in my current now moment and my highest path moving forward. That's how I ask it. I don't go in with a specific question. It's just not what I do. I think I did that, like I said, in the shamanic apprenticeship. Things were much more focused around like specific questions. And now, like, I don't know, it's not really how spirit rolls anyways. So I find if I just leave it open, just give me what's for my highest and best. So I pulled 4 cards, and I ended up sharing them last night at the meditation because I could tell that they were not just for me, and they resonated with everybody last night. So I'll quickly share them. The first card was acceptance. And because I read the book, because of course I was actually egoically reading the card, and I knew I was, like, because it didn't feel like reassuring to me. Like the information that was coming through, I knew it was in my head. So I was like, all right, I need the book. And basically the book was telling me with this card of acceptance that it was all about surrendering to all of my pain, to all of my emotions that were coming up whenever they come up, and to basically allow myself to surrender to it for as long as I need to, and that there is no right or wrong way, and that the more I surrender to it, I will reach another layer of acceptance. And that's true. Because acceptance, my friends, is not the same thing as tolerance. And I know this because I'm somebody that operated from tolerance the majority of my life, meaning I tolerated a lot of shit. And I did it out of fear of not having people in my life. So I tolerated a lot. And it doesn't feel the same way as acceptance to me. Tolerance feels like that, like I'm minimizing myself for other people. That's what tolerance feels like to me. I am making myself small for the sake of other people, but it's really for the sake of me still, because I want other people in my life. So that's tolerance, and I've done that my whole life. And I started to recognize that tolerance and acceptance do not at all feel the same way. Acceptance is something that happens in an energy process. You cannot force yourself to accept something that you are not actually accepting. You can tolerate anything you want, but you cannot actually force acceptance. So by surrendering to this shit show of a process, I reach a new layer of acceptance. So, card number 1. Card number 2, seek seclusion. Never have pulled that card before. And it was interesting because here I was yesterday. I want to flee. I want to isolate myself. I want to crawl into a cave and never come out. And then what do I pick? Seek seclusion. Seriously? Love you, Spirit. Basically, that was all about how I need to create a sanctuary for myself that only my energy, it's like my safe space, basically, that I go and retreat to when I need to go through my shit, and that seeking seclusion is where all of my answers really come. And it's true, because when I'm by myself in my shit, and even when I come out of it, I have all sorts of epiphanies, all sorts of downloads, all sorts of everything, right? It's in my seclusion that the magic actually happens. And so that's basically the premise of what the book said about that, is to honor the fact that I do absorb a lot from my environment, and that I need to be mindful of allowing myself space to go be me, feel me, do me, and to not feel guilty about it. And then the card right after that literally was release. And that was literally all about, it's interesting because it was so spot on to what, like, I was already kind of realizing. but it was about releasing. It kind of went with the acceptance card, releasing whatever was coming up for myself, to allow myself to release it for as long as I need to, and to not try to figure out where it came from. That's what the whole release message was about. Like, you don't need to know the originating source of what it is that you're carrying, whether it is your own energy, quote unquote, or others, right? If you're carrying it, it's yours now. You own it, right? Like, if you're carrying it, it's your fucking energy. Like, it don't matter if it came from somewhere else, if you absorbed it from somewhere else, it is your own energy. So allow yourself again to surrender to it, because then eventually it will release naturally. But the more you fight it and resist it, you will keep holding on to it. And so that was release. And then the fourth card I pulled was progress. And that basically was all about how I've been doing this work on myself for a long time now. It's basically what the book said. You've been on a conscious, awareness path for some time, and it has felt very draining. And that to not lose sight of, even though that's how it has felt, to not lose sight of the progress that I've made, because I wouldn't be experiencing the things I am right now if I hadn't made progress. So it was all about basically like staying the course. You're on the right path and you will continue to progress, because look at all of the progress you've made up until this point, and that is because of your commitment to yourself. So it was a very enlightening reading. It was a lot of what on some level I probably knew, but I needed at that time, I needed it to come from the book, because again, I was not in a state to be able to discern the messages that my higher self was really trying to say to me while I was in the thick of the shit. So when I shared it last night after meditation, everybody there was like, holy shit, I felt like that reading was for me. So again, this just exemplifies that we, the collective, are going through the same shit, right? Different maybe scenarios, but the same feelings. Because for me to be able to pull those cards for myself like 5 hours before meditation and then share them at meditation and have all whoever was left, I think there was 7 of us on after, that stayed on after the meditation to talk, and every single person be like, I thought that was for me. Like, hello, once again, this is how we are all connected and we're all going through our shit. So I say all this because we're all going through our shit and we're all going to go through our shit differently. And it is so important to be able to have compassion with yourself more than anything with yourself, because when you have it with yourself, it just trickles into how you perceive other people. It has to start with yourself. The love and the compassion literally has to start with yourself. And I'm still working on that tremendously, this self-love, right? I started again this week telling myself I love myself in the mirror, which I had done that a while ago for a while, and I hadn't done it in a while. So I started doing it this week, and I got super emotional when I was doing it. And then I started watching my first I like stared into my eyes, and that always just like just brings up all sorts of visions for me when I do that, because I'm looking into my eyes and I'm seeing all of me in my different incarnations. So it's like I was seeing not just Maria Gingras, but every other version thus far that I've remembered of myself. And it's like I was telling all those versions that I love them. And then the third day that I did it, I decided to stare at my mouth when I was saying it. And that felt really weird, because it was like I was looking at somebody else saying it to me, which is what I've wanted my whole life, right? That external validation and that external love from other people. Just tell me that you love me. Just tell me that you're never gonna leave, right? All that. And here it was coming from my own lips, and I'm watching just my lips say it over and over, and it felt so fucking good. Because I realized that I actually don't need anyone else to love me. Nor can I control how other people feel about me, right? Like striving so much for that external approval and that external fucking validation and that external love, right? But yet we're striving for it, but we cannot make people feel anyway, just like we can't make ourselves feel anyway. Because again, peeps, it's all energy. So you feel a certain way because that's the energy that you're carrying around in your aura and in your body and in your mind. So we're not our emotions, but we sure think we are because we've done so well masking them and avoiding them that we've actually become a lot of them. But we cannot change them, we cannot control them. And the more we try to, the more we suffer because we're realizing, like, shit, I am trying to change energy. And oh, yes, that's not how this game works. I cannot change energy. That's so fucked up, my friends. It really is. Um, but yeah. So what I felt, I felt sad at first when I was doing it. I'm not gonna lie, there was like sadness, and then there was all of a sudden this overwhelming wave of gratitude, and it was like, wow, and I know this because I teach this. Again, this is where I say we all have a lot of understanding of these concepts as we're relearning them, remembering them. So we're really good at like teaching them and saying it and all that good stuff. But like then it comes to actually integrating it and practicing it. So it's like, yes, I know that we need to love ourselves first. Yes, I know we need to have compassion for ourselves first. Yes, I know we need to forgive ourselves first. Yes, I know this. It is knowledge that I have in my brain. But when you start to actually do it and implement it energetically, you have a whole new level of understanding of it. Let me just tell you that. Because it was like, I'm standing there doing it and I'm like, wow, I actually don't need anybody to love me, do I? Nope, I don't. And oh, wait, wow. Nothing I do or say is going to change how people feel or perceive me. Because how people feel about me or perceive me actually has nothing to do with me. Just like me with other people. And so, again, I do know this, I understand this, but I felt it yesterday when I was doing that. I felt it. It was like, and when you feel it, it's a completely different experience than just having the knowledge of it. It's like, holy shit. So it's like another epiphany, another awakening, even though it is knowledge that I already have and that I try to practice every day. I try to keep practicing this self-love. And it was just like, I felt it yesterday and it was like, whoa, like I actually don't need any of that, do I? I never did. But, and it's not to say I'm not still going to slip into those because I still am aware there is a part of me, parts of me that, oh, still want that approval. They do. And I'd be lying if I said like that was all gone because it's not. I know it's still there. But I realized yesterday I just hit a new layer of self-love and a new layer of acceptance and a new layer of being. And so I've hit another layer of healing, another layer of growth. I am continuing to progress. And the more I accept all that is, the quote unquote faster it moves and shifts. It's the acceptance of it that actually helps it to shift. But we can't accept it until we've actually felt it. So you can't accept grief until you've sat in it and felt it for as long as you need to. You cannot accept your insecurities until you have faced them over and over and over again. So that's legitimately how this energy game works. And that's what this is on this earth plane. In this 3D world, it is all an energy game. And so no matter where you perceive yourself to be in your own shifting, healing, evolving, just be cognizant of where you're still trying to change things, whether it's about you or externally, because that is exhausting. It is truly exhausting. And it's a no-win zone, because you will soon realize at some point, as I did, because again, these are all stages in the evolution. I went through the stage of believing that I had all these things I had to change and heal and fix about myself, when now I just recognize we all just have a lot of shadow, which is just unacknowledged stuff. Shadow is not all just trauma either. Shadow is just the parts of us that the ego has been very crafty in suppressing and masking. It masks it. Masks. What another great topic, but we won't get into that because whatever. It's part of the pandemic. But literally that's what it is. So it's like you are trying to change it, you're trying to heal it, and you're exhausted, right? You guys are exhausted. I know you are, because I am too. And I'm not even trying to change things anymore, and I'm exhausted but it's a different exhausted. This is just like an exhausted, like, whoo, I just let a lot of energy move through me and I allowed it to happen. Where the other one I'm speaking of is it's draining. Like it's literally draining. It drains my life force energy when I'm trying to fix all of these things, be the fixer. And hello, I was a nurse. That is a deep program in nurses, that we are to heal, fix, and save everyone. That's a program that's in many of us. But then you look at the career paths you've taken, right? And we've all taken different career paths or whatever jobs we do. And some jobs are much more focused on healing, fixing, and saving. Healthcare being one of those. So there are some deep programs within that I'm still peeling back, of like being the one that takes care of everyone and everything, right? Like we all have that on some level, but I recognize that is also a program within my nursing, that let me put myself on the back burner because I've got all these people that are way worse off than I am that need me. They need me, right? So then I have to heal, fix, and save them all. Bullshit. It's bullshit. It really is. And it's exhausting. It's very draining. And so those are a lot of the things that have been coming up for me this last week too, like the questioning of that stuff again. And I'm not trying to question it. It's just energetically happening. And it's like, oh my good God, but I thought that was love. I thought that was compassion. I thought that that's what I'm supposed to do. Isn't that what I'm supposed to do? Am I not supposed to do that? Supposed to? Again, another ego construct, people. Anytime you're like, am I supposed to? What am I supposed to be doing? Blah, 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 blah. Supposed to is just another ego construct. So just be aware of when you're in those states, what thoughts are coming up for you, what judgments are still coming up for you, like towards yourself, like, oh my God, I'm a bad human for thinking this now. I'm a bad human for feeling this way. That's what I've been doing the last 2 weeks. Those are the things that have been coming up for me. It's like, oh my God, now I'm a bad human. Oh my God, now I'm a bad human. A bad human to who? Society, who's told me what's good and bad, what's right and wrong. Society, who is so confused And then on a higher level, society that's run by people that are trying to confuse us and tell us what to do. From a very manipulative energy. So then when you start to hear yourself saying that to yourself, well, I don't know what the right thing to do is. I don't want to be a bad person. I like those words, bad, good, right, wrong, should, shouldn't, duality. That's duality. That's the 3D game, duality. And again, you can play in that for as long as you want to play in that. But as you start to become aware of it, you won't want to play in it that long. That's the whole thing. You won't want to. So just be aware of when that's coming up for you. Where are you still judging yourself? Where are you still judging other humans? Because if you're judging other humans, or if you have like harsh opinions about other humans or how people are living their life or whatever, it's still stemming from something inside of you that you haven't looked at or felt or accepted. That's really what it is. It's like there's still an energy in you that's being mirrored by them that you haven't accepted. And it's just going to keep coming up for you in several different ways, but it will keep coming up until you stop and look at it and feel it. And even then, it's not to say that a year from now, something similar won't come up again. It will. Oh, it absolutely will. Because the faster we start allowing this shift to happen, the more shit that's going to come up. And so I also know that. So I believe that there's also a fear in me that because I can literally feel the shift happening inside of my body, it's like, good God, what else are you going to make me remember now? I've remembered a lot. I don't want to remember anymore, right? That's what the ego says. So there's also that fear. Like, again, see how fear creeps into everything. So there's the fear of like, fuck, I have to go through more dark nights of the soul again. And it's like, yeah, but no. But no. If that's what you want to call it, if that's the label you want to give it, if that's the narrative that you want to give this process, well, then you can. But even that is scary, right? Dark night of the soul. There's like a scary tactic behind that. When you literally break it down to energy and go, oh shit, this is just an energy coming up, because it wouldn't be affecting me if I wasn't still holding it in my body. That's the whole thing of it. The energies that are happening around you, outside of you, in the environment, they wouldn't actually trigger you if on some level you weren't still carrying a mirror of that energy in you. It wouldn't trigger you. You would literally be in that observatory standpoint and just have a very like neutral, like, okay, that's where they are, right? And again, that's an energy you can try to fake that. I've tried that before. I did try to play that for a little bit. I'm so neutral to everything. No, you cannot fucking fake energy. Like, if you don't accept it, you don't accept it, and that is fine. But you won't accept it until you do, right? You won't get to that energy of acceptance until you do. So you can try to convince yourself that you're neutral or that you're not being triggered. But your body will tell you if you are. Your body will tell you if you're being triggered. So will your mind, because your mind will start perpetuating like cyclic thoughts. That's what happens to me. It's like cycled thoughts that like don't stop. And that was happening to me like a couple weeks ago too. And it was like so loud and I just wanted them to stop. And the more I was yelling at the thoughts to stop, the louder they were getting. So I was like, oh, okay, I just have to feel them. Or I have to write them out. Or I have to make a video to get it out. Or I have to in some way express it. And it doesn't even mean to somebody else. Because oftentimes when there's cyclic thoughts like that, I don't express it to anybody. Because I know that they're just my own carousel playing up here. That like, it won't benefit me to share, and it won't benefit whoever's listening. Like, so it's like, all right, I got to just allow these thoughts to work their way through me. and not bypass them. You can't bypass this shit. You're going to want to, but you can't. I mean, you can, but it's, again, still going to keep coming up for you. So yeah, this video ended up being probably longer than I intended, but that's how my videos roll. Once I get going, I don't know when to stop, and that is okay. It is more than okay. So yeah, it's definitely a journey. I kudos to all of you courageous beings that are consciously doing this, and even those of you that have no fucking clue what I'm talking about, still love ya, still give you kudos, because you still signed up for this earth plane game, and it ain't easy. None of it is. Whether you are consciously suffering, unconsciously suffering, it's a challenge. It's a challenge. So, with all that said, I think I covered everything. I really don't remember a lot of what I just talked about. So it'll be interesting if I rewatch this, because it's like before I made it, I'm like, oh, I want to bring this up, right? I want to bring that up. And it's like, I don't even know if I brought up half the points that I wanted to make, but I guess Spirit had me share whatever was relevant to whoever's going to watch it. And that's really what it's about. Hopefully it will resonate with some of you, all of you, none of you. It don't really matter, because again, it's helping me to just get it out there and be more real and vulnerable. Because this is super vulnerable for me to get on here and share like this and be this real, but this is helping me to be more real. Like, I don't pretend like I have all my shit together just because I am a coach, just because I am a shamanic practitioner, psychic medium, reader, blah, 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 those beautiful fancy labels. Like, I do not have my shit all together all the time, because I am a human as well. So it's really about honoring the fact that we don't have to have our shit all together all the time. That would actually be really kind of a boring human experience, I think, to be honest. And I don't think we would have signed up for this if that's truly what our soul's desire was to just walk through this like unscathed. You just you won't learn that much, you know. And I believe everybody learns in their human journey. I believe like you can't not learn, right? So I believe everybody learns something while they're here, many things. Um, I don't believe that people, even people that maybe have what they call like a resting life, like I literally believe everybody learns something while they're here, because you're experiencing experience. So that is learning. How do you walk through a human experience and not learn anything, right? Your soul learns it. Your soul's memory, your cellular memory, learns from the experience that it's walking in, that it's carrying. So we all learn all the time. I'm just what I would say on a more conscious learning journey. I am open to learning. I am open to remembering, even though my ego may fight those rememberings sometimes, a lot of times. I'm open to it because my soul is very much a part of me now. I'm very connected with her, and I know that that connection is going to continue to strengthen. Hence why me as the human will continue to feel like I'm changing, because it's my human ways that are changing. It's how I show up as my human self that changes. But it's really just I'm stepping back into who I always have been and always will be. So, with that said, my beautiful multidimensional beings, because that is the label I, at this point in my evolution, feel comfortable identifying with. Because yesterday, I was saying to my higher self, who the fuck am I without all of these? Like, who am I? And then it was like, you are a multidimensional being of light. I'm like, oh, I like that. It resonates with me, because multidimensional meaning in multiple dimensions, multiple experiences, multiple realities. And all of those realities are just a tiny puzzle piece of my entire soul signature. Maria Gingras is this like little tiny aspect of my soul. So she is part of who I am, but she is not who I am at all. And all of you out there, whether you are a parent, a spouse, a child, a teacher, a painter, a whatever label you self-identify with, you're actually none of those things, really. Like, that's not who you are. They are roles and parts of your human experience that in turn are part of your soul signature. But none of those one things is actually who you are. And that's where society is very confused. Because if you think about it as kids, what does everybody ask you? What do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? And it's always around a career. So we are pumped with the fact that we are our career. And I've said this in other videos, but it's so fucking true, man. Like, everybody identifies with their career to the point where then their human self becomes that aspect of their career in their human personal life. Just like as a nurse. I was a nurse at my job, but then I also took that program and became that in my life with everybody in my life. Feeling like if anybody had a medical problem, I am the one to come to. Come to me. It's crazy. It's crazy. Because I was feeding this serious lack of self-worth and lack of self-confidence. And I've said it before, but being a nurse was where I felt most confident. So I can recognize now, like, how I used it to feed my lack of worth. And so it was like, I'm the healthcare expert in the family. I am the one, right? But then it's like, fuck, I'm the one. Now I'm the one that's fucking the only one, right? And it's like, wow, I became my job everywhere. And it wasn't coming from, like I said in the compassion video I made with Sam, it wasn't actually coming from authentic compassion. It was coming from this role that I needed to play to show up for others, but also to feed my feelings of lack of worth. So it validated that I was important. I was important now, right? I was important in these people's lives because now I was needed. That's fucked up. I'm just realizing that as I'm saying it. That's what it was. It was like I felt important. See what I mean? Epiphanies happen just as you talk. It was all about feeling important, which also for me is feeling valued, feeling appreciated. Wow, that's what that was all about. So, yeah, awakenings here in real time. Love how it works. So I have no idea how long this is, but it's probably like close to 2 hours at this point. So I'm going to cut it off now. But thank you for anybody that stuck around and listened to the whole thing. I apologize if I actually, no, I don't apologize. I have to stop doing that too. And that also came through in my compassion video with Sam, from Spirit through her to me about stop apologizing. And I know that's a thing with me, that I'm a chronic apologizer, I say. And I know I've gotten better, but whoa, because I've gotten better, I can see where I still do it. And I was just about to apologize to all of you that if this video seems like it's all, like I'm not staying, like, what's the word? If it seems scattered, right? Because I am kind of scattered sometimes when I'm doing these things because I'm not in my thinking mind. So I'm just kind of allowing stuff to flow out. So it may not always stay super linear. See what I mean? Because I'm not in my linear mindset. I'm not trying to be. I'm just trying to like talk openly and discuss what I've been going through. And while I do that, Spirit also drops stuff in. So it gets like, where the fuck was I? So what I was about to do is I was about to apologize if this is scattered, but actually, no, I'm not sorry if it's not, because this is me, and this is how I show up, and roll with it, flow with it if you want, don't if you don't want to. I love you anyways. So, yes, beautiful, multidimensional beings. Love you. Thank you. Keep doing you. Keep loving you. Keep practicing all of these tools that we're all learning, right? And just have compassion for yourself and stop judging yourself for where you're at in your journey and stop judging others for where they're at because you're just draining your own life force energy by doing that and disempowering yourself and everybody else because we, the collective, are very connected. So when you're judging somebody else, you're judging yourself at the same time. And it doesn't feel good. Like that hurts us. It hurts us. And our body takes that on as another trauma. So if you're somebody that's really wanting to try to get through your traumas, stopping the judging will help because you're only creating actually more trauma by continuously judging and labeling and leveling where we're all at, where we ourselves are at, right? It's not to say you don't recognize the progress you've made. That's what it's all about. You recognize the progress you've made. That's what you do. You recognize every single day the little steps that you've made in that day that have felt good to you, that are starting to feel empowering, that are starting to feel like they're shifting things within you, that you honor that. You honor yourself for the work you're doing. But stop judging because it hurts like hell to judge. It hurts my body when I judge. And when my body is starting to have pain again, which I very rarely have any of like the intense physical pains that I used to have with my diseases, my autoimmune diseases, right? Very, very rarely. But I will still get flare-ups of some kind, but it's never to the magnitude of what I used to live with. But that's also my body's way of saying you're holding on to energy that's gotta go. And again, I don't go like, oh my God, what energy is in there right now? What energy is in my left thumb today? Maybe it's guilt. Like, no, I just go, oh, okay, so my body's telling me that I'm holding on to something. And usually it's judgment. So it's like, cool. All right, thanks, body, for telling me, for being that compass to signal when I'm out of alignment. And that's really all it's doing. So listen to your bodies because we've never been taught to do that. And our body is literally the vessel that's housing our spirit. Thus, the body knows what the spirit is trying to whisper to us. So the soul whispers very gently the guidance. Eventually, the body starts getting loud because now the body has been the vessel that has held on to the stuff, to the guk, to the muck, to the energy that we don't want to fully feel. And so now the body is like screaming at us, right? It's actually the body that is telling us where these things are still living inside of the body. So again, it's taking the guidance from the higher self that the higher self has been gently whispering into our ears from the day we entered the earth plane. But now the body is like, okay, human, you're still not listening to higher self. So now you're going to listen to me because you kind of have no choice because you're in me. I'm like, you are in the body. So listen to your bodies, my friends. Your bodies. Listen to the subtle things. Listen to those subtle symptoms because it's those subtle symptoms that if you ignore them, they will continue to manifest into dis-ease. You will end up with a lot of dis-eases if you are just bypassing those little symptoms that are popping up. Because all a symptom is a little signal, it's a little red flag saying, hey, human, you got some energy in your body right now that kind of wants to like be released. So unless you start to pay attention to it, it's eventually going to get louder. And that's what happens. So listen to your bodies, listen to your heart, follow your soul, and I love you.